At 1 a.m., the United States Supreme Court issued an emergency stay blocking the Trump regime from sending another group of Venezuelan migrants to concentration camps in El Salvador. It was a 7-2 ruling, very rare for the Supreme Court to jump in at 1 a.m., and they sent a clear message to the Trump regime. We don't trust you, Donald, so we are making sure we make our position clear by blocking the flights. We should also talk about what's been going down with Abrego Garcia. One of the reasons also the Supreme Court doesn't trust the Trump regime anymore. I could give you a million other reasons, but this is just one of them. We should talk about Senator Van Hollen's trip to El Salvador, meeting with Abrego Garcia, how the authoritarian leader of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, tried to set this up with like margaritas to act like Abrego Garcia was treating well. I want to talk about everything that's going on there, everything that's going on in the federal court proceedings before Judge Zinnes in Maryland, what the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal ruled, what a powerful ruling by a Reagan-appointed judge, Judge Wilkinson. Let's talk about the Washington, D.C. proceedings before federal Judge Booseberg, where he found the Trump regime in contempt regarding that original flight of the first group of Venezuelan migrants who were sent to the concentration camps in El Salvador. That contempt order was temporarily stayed by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. A bad panel, a bad ruling, but it's only an administrative stay, but we will bring that down. We will break that down. Also, the Supreme Court has set oral arguments on two major cases, one involving birthright citizenship, the other on nationwide injunctions in May, both on, I think, May 15th. We'll break this down and more on Legal AF. But Popok, I want to start off by reading from the opinion of Judge Wilkinson. I think we start off reading this. He's a Reagan-appointed judge, one of the leaders in the kind of conservative judicial movement, and one of the big feeders to Supreme Court justices. The clerks work for this guy, Wilkinson, first before working for the Supreme Court justice. Let me just read this one paragraph where he denied the Trump regime's attempt to appeal the order by Judge Zinnes when Judge Zinnes set out a process by which the Trump administration should show that it was trying to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia. Judge Wilkinson, again, Reagan-appointed conservative Republican, writing in a unanimous opinion for the Fourth Circuit, says, "It is difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter. But in this case, it is not hard at all. The government is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, it claims in essence that because it has rid itself of custody, that there is nothing that can be done. This should be shocking not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from courthouses still hold dear." We'll get to that ruling more on Legal AF, but I wanted to mention that at the outset. Michael Popok, a busy week in the courts, and then that 1 a.m. order earlier today,
which woke us both up, and we both hit respectively hot takes on Legal AF and here on Midas Touch Network. Look, we got a lawless executive branch led by Donald Trump, and we're watching courts at every level, circuit court, trial court, Supreme Court, struggle with the tools in their toolbox on how to restrain them. You and I are going to talk about three different, this is going to be like a breakout tutorial, law school meets TED Talk about administrative stays. We've got three in the last 48 hours that were considered by three different courts about Donald Trump's out of control, reckless, lawless immigration policy. We've got the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals written by Harvey Wilkinson. And I don't want to undersell Wilkinson for a minute. He is a icon, a rock-ribbed Reagan Republican. He is if they were chiseling a new Mount Rushmore, especially for the Federalist Society, he would be on it. Judge Ludig from the formerly of the Fourth Circuit would be on it. I mean, this is about as far away, Ben, from a radical leftist, Marxist, activist judge, which Donald Trump always uses those words to talk about somebody like Judge Zinnes at the Fourth. Not only that, Harvey Wilkinson not only wrote a book when he was like 26 years old coming out of a Supreme Court clerkship, but he wrote a book about 10 years ago about cosmic interpretation of the Constitution, in particular, arguing that judges should never be activists, judges should never be ideologues, judges should be humble and have humility. That's the guy that just wrote the passage. And there's some others in there that we'll touch on when we get to that segment. So that was the fourth, saying, we respect what Judge Zinnes is doing. She's doing everything right off the Supreme Court decision in her favor about Armando Abrego Garcia. You go, Judge. You do you. But while we're here, let's use soaring rhetoric to completely tear down Donald Trump and appeal to his inner angels, his higher angels. He has no higher angels. It's all devils replacing other devils. That's the fourth. Then the D.C. Court of Appeals, a day later, in a 3-judge panel that you and I worried about because we saw 2 Trumpers in Rayo and Katsas, they came out and said, well, we hear you, Judge Booseberg, about your probable cause on criminal contempt against the Trump administration and possible referral for prosecution. But why don't we put a pin in that for a day or two while we get our arms around the process? So forget your next Wednesday deadline, stay. And then we have a dissent from Pollard, the Obama appointee, who said, why are we staying anything? This isn't even ripe for an appeal. And then 1 a.m. or 10 p.m., whatever it was, Eastern time, Pacific time, bing, 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 you're my phone. Everybody's phone starts blowing up. I'm walking a dog. My dog didn't feel well late last night. And I get, holy cow, look what just got issued. And we had been following and tracking this cases, what the ACLU had been doing off of 3 weeks ago's ruling by the Supreme Court, which told Judge Booseberg, you're right and you're wrong. You're right on the Alien Enemies Act about there needs to be due process and notice, but you're wrong about the procedure. It needs to be habeas corpus petitions in individual places where these people are being processed before they leave the United States. We'll just completely ignore the 250 that already went, and we'll never get that due process. That's now the law of the land. So go do it by individual petitions. All right, ACLU said, we'll see you judges, and we'll match you. They filed individual petitions and class action petitions on habeas corpus in various jurisdictions and started getting rulings in their favor. The one in Texas, Northern District, that one in particular, they couldn't get anybody to give them the stay, and they had notice from a number of immigration lawyers that their clients were given imminent, their removal was imminent, off on a plane under the Alien Enemies Act over to El Salvador, like any moment. So they ran to the judge. The judge says no. They ran to the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit, of course, said, well, we don't see what the harm is going to be, putting them on a plane without due process. And so they had to file this fast application last night to the Supreme Court. And in a 7-2 decision, we have an administrative stay. You and I are going to talk more about what administrative stays, where they were very pointed and said, nobody in the Northern District of Texas, including Blue Bonnet, wherever that is, that is a part of this putative class, is going anywhere until we figure out with briefing what's going on here. So everybody sit down. Now, let's see what the Trump administration does next. They're very good at taunting, and they're very good at funny memes and getting Bukele, who's their puppet, to do funny things to their MAGA base. But this is the United States Supreme Court and their commands. And we've got 2 judges, the Supreme Court and Judge Zinnes in the Fourth Circuit, Maryland trial court, who are maneuvering this administration into possible second-level contempt.
All right. There's a lot of moving parts here, and a lot of people are saying, okay, Abrego, Supreme Court, Texas, Blue Bonnet detention, Booseberg, Judge Zinnes. You guys are saying a lot of things. Can you break it down for me what's happening? So let's just talk about states, districts, right? There's DC proceedings, District of Columbia, federal court there. That's Judge Booseberg. Judge Booseberg was the judge who ordered that whatever Trump was doing with the first group of Venezuelans who were sent to the El Salvador concentration camps be returned. The Trump regime violated that order, sent that first group that's currently right now in CCOT, the El Salvador concentration camp. And so Booseberg, DC, federal judge, he was the one who's found probable cause for the Trump regime in contempt, criminal contempt, for violating his order. Separately, the Supreme Court reversed Judge Booseberg's order, essentially ordering the return of those prisoners and ordering or being involved in and enjoining what the Trump regime did, because the Supreme Court ruled, as Popok said, that because he's a D.C. judge, he doesn't have jurisdiction, say, for people who live in Maryland or people who are being held in Texas, that he could only deal with the things before him in Washington, D.C. So therefore, there has to be cases filed in different districts. Okay, so Booseberg, federal judge, D.C. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals is like the boss of Booseberg. They're the appeals court that sits above the trial court. Above it all is the United States Supreme Court. So we understand that part. Separately, Abrego Garcia. Abrego Garcia, he's referred to as a Maryland man, right? So why is the case filed in Maryland? He's from Maryland. That's where he lives. He's married to an American woman. His kids are citizens. His wife's a citizen. An immigration judge in 2019 when Trump was in office, issued a withholding order saying you can deport Abrego to other countries, just not to El Salvador. Also, they gave him a work permit in 2019. He has to check in with ICE, but he was able to work in Maryland. He had no criminal history, never criminal history. That's on the paperwork itself. But because there was a double hearsay accusation by a crooked cop who then pled guilty to other misconduct involving prostitutes and paying prostitutes and all this weird stuff and criminal stuff, the immigration judge in 2019 did say you can deport if you want to at your election, just not to El Salvador, but he can work in the United States. We don't think that he's that big of a danger, so we're going to give him a work permit, which requires background checks. In Maryland, there's a federal court there. Judge Booseberg's a D.C. judge, so he's not going to be the Maryland judge. Maryland's going to be a Maryland judge. So a district judge in Maryland, federal court judge, the way Booseberg's a federal judge, there are federal judges in Maryland. The federal judge in Maryland is federal Judge Zinnes. That's her name. It's Judge Zinnes. And so Judge Zinnes is the one who has been following the Supreme Court's 9-0 ruling, which is return Abrego, facilitate the return. Zinnes was the first to say, return Abrego Garcia. Then the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals is the boss. They sit above. They're the appeals court for the Maryland District Court. Remember in D.C., I said the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals sits above the D.C. District Court. In Maryland, it is the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. In New York, it would be the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. In Florida or Georgia, it would be the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. There's different circuit courts.
11th.
Sorry, 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Colorado would be the 10th.
Right.
Sorry, 11th Circuit Court of Appeals.
I just want to show you I was listening.
That's good. Thank you. In different districts, they have different circuit courts that sit above the circuit courts of appeals. So Maryland, it's Fourth Circuit. So when we're talking about the Fourth Circuit, they are hearing Trump's appeal over federal Judge Zinnes requiring that there be a process for facilitating the return of Abrego Garcia. Now, separately, there's Texas federal court. Why is Texas involved? Because the second batch of Venezuelan migrants, remember the first batch, and it's horrific that I'm referring to them as batches, groups of people, but that's how the Trump regime is treating them as. The first group's already in CICOT, the concentration camp in El Salvador. A second group was moved to a detention center in Texas in the Northern District called the Blue Bonnet Detention Center. That's its name, Blue Bonnet Detention Center. It's an ICE facility where they're being held. So the jurisdiction there, and the Trump regime wants the jurisdiction to be in Texas, more Republican judges, right-wing judges, Trump-appointed judges in Texas. So the Northern District of Texas has jurisdiction there. And there, the judge is a judge named Wes Hendrickx, who Trump appointed. So we all have the story straight. D.C., Booseberg, Maryland, Zinnes, Fourth Circuit, Maryland, D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, D.C. In Texas, It's the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that oversees Texas. The federal judge who has this case is named what did I say? Judge Hendrickx. Judge Wes Hendrickx. So those are all the judges who are involved. And the Supreme Court is above it all. So I just want everybody to have their story straight. Now, with this second batch of migrants, the Trump regime, this guy Ensign, who's the Trump DOJ lawyer, made the representation both in DC and in Texas, where the ACLU brought two separate cases. Because of these lawsuits, Ensign said, we are not going to, we promise you, we won't send this second group of migrants to the concentration camp in El Salvador without a court order. Just trust us. Trust me, bro. Why was it in the two different cases? Why was it in DC? And why was it in Texas? Because the ACLU, who represented these migrants, didn't really know. They wanted Judge Booseberg to issue a class-wide injunction. Booseberg says, I don't have the power to do that because the Supreme Court said they have to be filed in individual states. So the ACLU went to Texas before Judge Hendrickx, and the Trump regime said, we're not going to do anything. Don't worry, Hendrickx. We're not going to send him. So Hendrickx, Popok, was basically like, it's a moot issue. The government's representing they're not going to send it. So what can I do? So then it was appealed to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals basically sat on it. Then there was new evidence that the Trump regime, even though they made the representation, said they were going to send these people to El Salvador, to which the ACLU went back in front of the Texas District Court Judge Hendrickx, and then Hendrickx, because he's a Trumpy guy who tried to be like, oh, I don't know what to do, said, sorry, I don't have jurisdiction. The Fifth Circuit now has jurisdiction because you've already appealed my other order. Nothing I can do. The Fifth Circuit didn't do anything. So the ACLU with the second group had to go to the United States Supreme Court and say, Supreme Court, we need you to do something, to which the Trump regime said to the Supreme Court, hey, Supreme Court, don't worry. We've told the district court in DC. We've told the district court in Texas. We're not going to send these migrants to the concentration camps until they get a habeas proceeding. So that's the framework. And then when the Supreme Court still said, Popok, we don't trust you, that's a big deal. I'm sorry, Popok, I described that so long, but there's so much moving parts with this district, that district. I want you to talk about the specific cases, but I wanted to do a little professor lesson of where these districts are. That's all. Yeah.
And look, let me take it from another angle. A masterful, and this should give our audience a lot of confidence, a masterful display of litigation skill and strategy and tactics by the American Civil Liberties Union in this, everything that you just described, most of what you just described as it relates to those that haven't yet been removed but are being threatened with imminent removal. The lack of due process is the problem here. And the Trump administration's refusal to recognize the fundamental precept of due process and notice, because a due process without notice is no due process at all. And you can also compromise due process if you don't give the party enough time with a proper notice, like in Spanish, not in English, which is what happened here. Give them time to retain counsel, since the Supreme Court has said they have to file individual or maybe class action versions of petitions for writ of habeas corpus. They got to get together in a class, or they've got to retain a lawyer. The lawyer has to have time to prepare and file the petition. The court has to have time to make a ruling as the jets are fueling and the wheels are about to roll up. And that means that the Trump administration is, as we know from the social media postings where they just flouted, their answer to Judge Wilkinson, like, can't you use your higher angels to, in this moment in time, to support the rule of law? And they were like, oh, look at this. Senator Van Hollen, we have a response to you. We're gonna draw penises and mustaches on the New York Times headline. You're never getting Abrego Garcia back. They're like, what? And if anybody doesn't think that went into when we get to it, the United States Supreme Court's 7-2 decision to at least do an administrative stay to stop those flights, I assure you, they saw that. Everybody saw it, whether you follow the Midas Touch Network or Legal AF or not. So masterful job of the ACLU on this due process notice issue. They run first to Booseberg, who you've identified, the judge in D.C. And Booseberg, who, trust me, is chomping at the bit to do something in this case besides the criminal contempt finding. He says, guys, I'd like to. However, the Supreme Court has said, my bosses have said, I don't have jurisdiction. This has to be in Texas or New York or Colorado, all these other places before these people are deported. So I can't do a class action notice requirement. But they're fueling the planes. I know, I hear you. So ACLU, boom, runs back to the judge, and they get the judge that you identified. Interesting thing about him, we'll talk about him a little bit later. He was an Obama appointee that never got out of committee. Then Trump picked him up and put him there. But he gave more credence to the Department of Justice and their credibility. Why would they lie to me? I don't know. They lie every court they're in. Or the lawyers are purposefully not given information by their client, the administration, or their bosses at the Department of Justice in order to make them have implausible deniability. And that's just as bad. The fact that they participate in that as lawyers. So ACLU loses at the judge in Texas, in the Northern District of Texas, where this blue bonnet is. They have been winning all around. They won in the Southern District of Texas because each state is divided into federal districts. So this is why when you and I
Popok,
get to...
they lose because of the only reason why they lost is because the Trump regime, the executive branch, says, we agree with what you're saying. We'll give him habeas. That's the only reason why they lost.
Yeah.
And they said, we don't trust you.
Right. So Southern District of Texas, this is why when you and I get to nationwide injunctions, why they're so important. Judge there says, well, let's rid of habeas corpus. But in the entire Southern District of Texas, nobody's going anywhere. Colorado, same thing. Part of Colorado, part of New York, same thing. Northern District of Texas, blue bonnet, no. This judge not doing it. So they run off to the Fifth Circuit, which is so far right-leaning, it barely can stand up. So they go there, and the Fifth Circuit says, well, we don't see a problem, even though there's 3 affidavits from immigration lawyers that say, our guys are being told, and it's now been translated for them, that they are imminently going to be boarded on planes. Forget that guy named Drew Ensign. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And they filed the affidavits. Well, no, we're not going to do that. And especially given that the Supreme Court has basically acknowledged that the people already sent to El Salvador are never coming back. And they don't have due process rights because they got off on the planes outside of jurisdiction before anything could happen. So ACLU goes, crap. Fire up. I'm sure they're all working simultaneously. All these teams are working simultaneously. Fire up the Supreme Court emergency application brief. It was yesterday. File it. Let's go. But this was last gasp. If they didn't get that stay at 1 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock, whatever it was, these guys were gone, never to be seen from again, not sipping margaritas, in CCOT, done. And the Supreme Court, as I said on one of my hot takes, maybe this is what the Supreme Court says does matter. Maybe they care about what their orders are. So it's an administrative stay for now, meaning it's a temporary hold the ring or put a pin in it as they get briefing in from the other side, which would be the Solicitor General's office for Trump. And then they'll make their decision without the same problem. ShadowDocket came up through Alito, referred to the full court, 2 in dissent, Alito and Thomas. We're still waiting for Alito's statement, whatever that means, about why he wouldn't have sided with the 7-2. But they are like, let's get the briefing in. Nobody go anywhere. Nobody leave. Nobody gets deported and removed until we've had time to do it. Doesn't mean once they got the full briefing, without oral argument, on a very limited, scant skeletal record, it doesn't mean, managing expectations here for the audience, that they couldn't redo the voting, so to speak, and it comes out against these guys. Oh no, that seems to be like enough due process. I just don't see it. What is the due process? What is the Solicitor General going to say? The only thing I think he can say, Ben, which is Donald Trump's former appellate criminal lawyer, John Sauer, is, oh, you're getting into foreign affairs again. This is the power. A war has been declared. He doesn't, very limited rights under habeas corpus. I just don't see it based on the record. I think even the Supreme Court, 5 votes of it at least, are going to say, this is not notice and due process through habeas that we demanded, and you're effing with us. They're not going to say that last part. But I think, what do you think the Supreme Court does, even on full briefing by John Sauer?
I think they're going to clarify now what the habeas process looks like,
right?
In detail, in depth, what the time constraints are that need to be provided, and really set forth the process by which the habeas takes place. Because now that the Supreme Court really prevented the kind of class action style that the ACLU wanted, let's go to one judge in DC to address all this whole group together. Now we have to go deal with the Maryland case in Maryland, the Texas case in Texas. And the problem is, when you divide and conquer migrants who often almost all don't have the resources to have a lawyer lined up and to, within 24 hours, file habeas corpus petitions and have hearings and line up the lawyers, you create this resource disparity, which then allows the government to take people and very quickly move them to El Salvador.
Before you move on, you can finish your thought, but before you move on, I have one last thought before we take our break.
You know what I was going to say? I think Judge Wilkinson's ruling that we're going to talk about after the break played a major part in this. I think the fact that the Supreme Court gave Donald Trump a face-saving way out of Abrego Garcia in the 9-0 ruling about facilitate, and Trump gave them the middle finger. When we come back, I want to read the Supreme Court ruling. It's short, but what it says to me, not in the words, but in its substance, is we don't trust your representations, Trump regime, that you're not going to send these people to El Salvador. If this was any other executive branch, any other one, Biden, Bush, Reagan, Clinton, Obama, you name it, and the executive branch told a court, Nixon. And this is why the Fifth Circuit and the federal judge in Texas ruled the way they did, because they're like, nah, we still trust Trump. So what do you want us to do here? The Supreme Court's like, we don't. So we're putting it in an order. That's extraordinary.
I agree with you. One last 1 minute point, then we'll take the break that I know we're gearing up for. What we're also watching, and I want to put this on our audience's radar, is the unseemly side of the shadow docket and the emergency docket. Donald Trump has obviously made a decision that he's going to slam the Supreme Court with as many emergency applications. This one came from the ACLU, but it's the same problem on the flip side of the coin. When the emergency docket is activated, okay, it means scant record development of facts below by the trial judge. It means limited briefing on those scant facts that were developed. It means no oral argument. And more importantly, because you and I are students of the Supreme Court, I got my first copy of The Brethren about, back when I was in high school, about what goes on in the inner workings of the Supreme Court and how they make their opinions. But that was nothing about the shadow docket. That was about what Trump figured out is, if you don't give the Supreme Court individual justices time to lobby each other and time to circulate competing drafts and use their clerks to run around the hallway to try to gather votes and do a caucus, if you don't do that, then they have to go into their ideological corners. And he knows he's got 4 votes just on reflexive ideology in Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas. He knows that the rule of law is outnumbered 4-3 right there, with the 3 being, of course, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Kagan, and Sotomayor. So then it's just all he has to do is fight for 1, because he only has to get 1 of Roberts and or Amy Coney Barrett. But what we're watching is, and this is why you'll see dissents and statements and other things coming out of the Supreme Court, because they're not allowed to do their normal deliberative process over a series of months and circulate, because Trump's not allowing them, or Trump's actions are causing the emergency docket to be used, which is ending up in the exact same place. Usually when you and I studied the law and did an entire course for a year or 2 on con law, constitutional law, the cases that we studied came out of that deliberative process that I just identified. Brown versus the Board of Education, Griswold v. Connecticut, Marbury versus Madison, all of it. It all came out of this deliberative process and vote trading and getting. That's gone. Everything you and I have been talking about over the last 80, 90 days is all coming off of the emergency shadow docket. And it's a shabby way to run a democracy.
Agree with you, Popok. I want to remind everybody to go to Michael Popok's YouTube channel. It's on its way to 1 million subscribers, the Legal AF YouTube channel. Make sure you check it out, hit subscribe, and turn your notifications on. In addition, would love for everybody to also subscribe here. Of course, we're on our way to 5 million subscribers. Michael Popok started his own law firm. Where do people reach out to you, Popok? For they have catastrophic injury. They know someone who's been in a catastrophic injury. If they themselves have been injured, the consultations are free. We had a lot of demand of people wanting, they had cases and really kind of, you handle wrongful death cases, real serious injury cases, sexual harassment and abuse cases. So if anyone has a case like that, reach out to Popok's law firm now. Popok, where can they reach out to you?
1-877 Popok AF. We've got lawyers and people standing by to talk about your case for a free case consultation. And you can also go to the website, popokfirm.com. And there's a reason I'm focusing on those kind of catastrophic, horrible cases, life-altering cases. It's because, this is what I can, in addition to the commitment I've made to the Midas Touch Network and to help grow Legal AF as a community. This is where my limited legal time can best be spent. And that's why we focused on it there. Thanks for talking about it, Ben.
Everybody, we'll be right back after a quick break. We've got a lot more to discuss, and we'll see you right after the short break.
Did you know Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the U.S. with thousands of different plants and over 2 million happy customers? They have all the plants your yard needs, like fruit trees, privacy trees, flowering trees, shrubs, and so much more. Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to get your dream yard. Order online and get your plants delivered directly to your door in just a few days without ever leaving home. Their Alive and Thrive guarantee ensures your plants arrive happy and healthy. Plus, get support from trained plant experts on call to help you plan your landscape, choose the right plants, and learn how to care for them. We recently moved into a new house, and it came with 2 big bald spots where grass used to be, but the prior owner's dog wore out. So we turned to Fast Growing Trees, and their plant experts' advice turned an eyesore into one of our favorite features of the yard, with a few key lime trees suited for our climate and location. Saved us all the aggravation of dealing with unknown landscapers and nurseries, too. Big yard, small yard, no yard. Fast Growing Trees has over 6,000 plants to fit any space, from indoor plants to fruit trees to full-size privacy trees and more. And their 14-point quality checklist ensures you're getting the best quality plant possible. Each plant is cared for individually based on their needs, from watering routines to the amount of sunlight, giving your plants the care they deserve from the time they start growing to when they ship to your home. Whether you're looking to add privacy, shade, or natural beauty to your yard, Fast Growing Trees has in-house experts ready to help you make the right selection, with plant experts on call to offer growing and care advice. You can talk to a plant expert about your soil type, landscape design, how to take care of your plants, and everything else you need. No green thumb required. Every plant comes with instructions and tips to take care of your new plants so they can grow to their fullest potential. This spring, they have the best deals for your yard, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to our show get 15% off their first purchase when using the code LEGALAF at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code LEGALAF at checkout. fastgrowingtrees.com, code LEGALAF. Now's the perfect time to plant. Use LEGALAF to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. 420 is around the corner, and there's no better time to elevate your wellness routine. Whether you want to relax, recharge, or refocus, Vaia has the perfect lineup for you. If you haven't tried them yet, you're seriously missing out. Whether you need to unwind, refocus, or boost your mood, Vaia is here to enhance your everyday and night. Trusted by over 500,000 happy customers, Vaia is changing the game in natural wellness, blending powerful, high-quality hemp-derived ingredients to deliver real,
effect-driven benefits. Whether you're looking to sleep better, have better libido, improve focus, recover, or simply relax, Vaia has a tailored solution just for you. With products ranging from 0 to high cannabinoid levels, Vaia lets you fully customize your experience to fit your needs. Whether you're looking to support your daily wellness routine, enhance focus and clarity, or unwind with deep relaxation, Vaia has you covered. From their award-winning effect-forward gummies to calming drops, every Vaia product is thoughtfully crafted, made with organic, lab-tested hemp, sourced from trusted, independent American-owned farms. And the best part? Vaia legally ships across the USA, discreet, direct to your door, no medical card required, and backed by a worry-free guarantee. Not sure where to start? Take Vaia's Product Finder quiz to get personalized recommendations tailored to your needs. It can take you less than 60 seconds to complete. So if you're 21 years or older, treat yourself to Vaia's annual Spring 420 sale. Black Friday level savings up to 35% site-wide right now, up to 50% off packs and bundles, and get a free gift, plus more savings with your first order using our exclusive code LEGALAF at the link in our description. Plus, enjoy free shipping on orders over $100. Unlock the power of nature with Vaia's organic and vegan hemp extracts, perfect for relaxation and rejuvenation. Vaia is the only lifestyle hemp brand. They use compounds found in hemp along with active plant extracts to create products, each with a specific effect in mind. Whether you want to get better sleep, ease anxiety, enhance your mood, or just get high, they have something for you. Their products range from 0 milligram to 100 milligrams of THC, so these guys have you covered, whether you're looking to microdose or enjoy more potent effects. Vaia's products are sourced from the finest hemp for your peace of mind, plus they're lab tested and certified and feature premium products that fit your budget. If you're 21 years or older, check out the link to Vaia in our description and treat yourself to Vaia's annual Spring 420 sale. Black Friday level savings up to 35% site-wide right now, up to 50% off packs and bundles, and get a free gift plus more savings with your first order using our exclusive code LEGALAF, plus free shipping on orders over $100. That's code LEGALAF at the link in our description. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Vaia.
Welcome back to Legal AF. Thank you to our pro-democracy sponsors. The discount codes for those sponsors are in the description below. Jordy spends a long time negotiating those discount deals, so check it out. And they help keep shows like this going on the Midas Touch Network. Now that you all are experts in jurisdiction and the way the Court of Appeals oversee the district courts and the Supreme Court oversees it all, let me just read for you the Supreme Court order so you all can, I'm sure you now will understand it much better after the description that Michael Popok and I gave in the first segment. There is before the court an application on behalf of a putative class of detainees seeking an injunction against their removal under the Alien Enemies Act. The matter is currently pending before the Fifth Circuit. Upon action by the Fifth Circuit, the Solicitor General is invited to file a response to the application before this court as soon as possible. The government is directed not to remove any member of the putative class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court. Justice Thomas and Justice Alito dissent from the court's order. Statement from Justice Alito to follow. So a 7-2 panel on this issue, or 7-2 ruling on this issue. And that's the order. That's the current status. We'll keep you posted as we learn more. So Michael Popok, throughout the week and the various, Thursday, Friday, when Senator Van Hollen of Maryland senator, went to see Abrego Garcia. At first, he was denied access. Then he also invoked international law, which I think was a major factor in applying pressure. The official Trump accounts were posting photos, AI manipulated photos of Senator Van Hollen to look like an MS-13 gang member with like MS-13 tattoos on his forehead, and just kind of mocking him. And then Senator Van Hollen was able to secure a meeting with Abrego Garcia. Look, folks, El Salvador is a poor Latin American country. It relies on tourism. And the idea of Americans boycotting El Salvador tourism, the idea of international communities applying pressure on El Salvador, whose entire GDP is $34 billion a year, like that pressure works. Their authoritarian leader, Nayib Bukele, tried to act like this was like checkmate and he was playing like three-dimensional chess against Senator Van Hollen. He tried to set up a photo op with like margaritas and poolside to make it seem like Abrego Garcia was just having the time of his life out there. Later, Senator Van Hollen talked about all of the North Korea, or should I say El Salvador style, or now Trumpian style manipulation and propaganda that was taking place. But we did get signs of life of Abrego Garcia. We also learned that he was moved from CCOT, the concentration camp, to another prison facility as well in El Salvador. One of the reasons I think that's the case is that CCOT is Bukele's baby. Like, it's like his main thing. It's his main international kind of propaganda. And he sees the pressure as we're all focusing on what's going on in CCOT as this concentration camp. And so whether Abrego is going to be able to come back to the United States or not, the Trump administration or regime is saying no. Bukele's saying never. But if he does, I think that Bukele is nervous. I mean, that's why he's moving him out of CCOT, so that he's not able to tell additional stories about what's going on in CCOT. That's why I think he's being moved. But Popok, why don't you walk us through, though, because now that we've also, I think, appropriately framed jurisdiction, Judge Zinnis's ruling, Fourth Circuit, which oversees the Maryland Court of Appeals, that's the 3-judge panel with Judge Wilkinson, those rulings, and then this meeting between Senator Van Hollen and Abrego. Let's take that piece right now.
Yeah. The just to touch on El Salvador for just a moment, it's an island of 6 million people whose GDP is what you outlined. He has this is what Bukele wanted. He had an empty CCOT with 40,000 beds in it that he wanted filled, and so that dangle of $6 million, which has to be pursuant to some sort of contractor agreement that we're trying to get our hands on. Unless the Trump administration is just completely flagrant in how they mismanage our taxpayer dollars and just sent $6 million and not on some sort of agreement. We'll get to the bottom of that. Judge Zinnis will get to the bottom of it. 1 out of every 68 people in El Salvador is in jail. If you do the math, when Donald Trump said, when Bukele visited, remember that guy with the black T-shirt and the suit jacket? They had no problem when he didn't wear a shirt and tie. It's only when Zelensky, who's at war, they had a problem when he didn't wear a shirt and tie. But if it's Musk or it's this guy, the petty dictator of El Salvador, no, everything's fine. And there, when they were doing this scripted, as you and I envisioned and anticipated, pitch and catch they could later use in court between Bukele and Trump and all the other clowns. This is like a clown car shoved together with lots of different clowns in the Trump administration. All these cabinet members, the Oval Office has become the new Broadway stage for Donald Trump. He's always got to do something there. Everybody's got to be there with him. Take turns. Stephen Miller, who I'm sure is behind the White House posting about Van Hollen and about you're never going to get him back. Pam Bondi, and then Bukele, here's your part of the script that was written for you. And there, Trump said, oh, you need more, 40,000. We need 5 times that. We need bigger. We need more. Now, do the math. 6 million people at the 250 that went already, that's 24,000 a prisoner. If you fill the jails with American sent prisoners, use it as a storage unit for human beings, you're talking about $200 billion going to El Salvador. Now you see why he's doing the dance of Donald Trump? Although it does send a chill down my spine that we're letting the El Salvadorian leader tell us how to run our rule of law and our constitution and our constitutional republic. So Van Hollen from Maryland, because we know Abrego Garcia lived with his family in Maryland. He was picked up and arrested in front of his 5-year-old, just to put a point on this. Van Hollen goes down. And he's not the only one. Cory Booker, fresh off his 35-hour longest Senate speech in history, he's going down there. I'm sure AOC will go down. There's a lot of people that are going down to CCOT. And so the best they could do was to give him a shirt and a cap and let him meet with Van Hollen. Trump saying, oh, you're a fool, and it's a fool's errand, and he's a fool, and he's not a Maryland man. Let me correct you. So that's going on with the political pressure, because we sit at that intersection of law and politics. You've got the outside real world, political pressure. And the optics were so bad for the Trump administration that they tried to deep fake the optics by having Bukele post the margarita glasses and then the picture of the guy, Van Hollen as a member of MS-13 and all the rest of it. Okay, so that's going on in real world, real time. And we know that Donald Trump can be pressured into folding. Folded on Harvard, we'll talk about it later. Folded on tariffs because he's watching cable news. We know how to get him to fold. And it's this world, including the world that Midas Touch contributes to in the ecosystem of independent journalism, that matters. And so that's going on. In the meantime, Judge Zinnes, Paula Zinnes, an Obama appointee, fine jurist, could be Supreme Court judge one day, if a justice one day, if the Democrats win the White House again, which they should. She makes her initial ruling about Abrego Garcia, orders that the Trump administration facilitate his release from El Salvador. They take it up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court sides with Judge Zinnes 2 weeks ago. They just said, there's one word in there we want you to clarify, effectuate. What you mean? Fix it. We're fine with everything else. Your whole way you're administering justice, your whole due process angle, your whole Fifth Amendment thing, you're doing it right. That's the right order. We got you 9-0. She takes it back like that evening and says, all right, well, I'll take a blue pencil. I got a blue pencil here. I'll take out the word effectuate. I'll take out the deadline for the return of Abrego Garcia. You take all appropriate steps to facilitate his release from jail. And now we start the Orwellian, tortured stretching of words beyond all recognition. Words don't mean anything. They're like in a spelling bee. What does facilitate mean? Can you use it in a sentence? Yes. The sentence is, get him out of jail. That's the sentence. Oh, it's foreign affairs. Oh, it's an activist Marxist judge telling a president how to conduct foreign affairs who was duly elected. No, that's not what it is. Oh, well, we'll facilitate on the domestic side. If he shows up randomly, I'm not making this up. If there's like a prison break and he gets out on his own and he shows up at a port or an airport, we'll let him in. We'll deport him and remove him to another country immediately, but we'll let him in. And that's not what the court said. So Zinnes holds a hearing about their failure to comply and determines at that hearing, as she throws the book at Drew Henson, who is the resident punching bag. He is the piñata for the Trump administration. And willingly, it's not he could quit any time. They fired a couple of days ago, and I did a hot take on it, Mr. Ruveni, who told the truth about the failure of the Trump administration to abide by another federal court's order, judge's order, immigration order, and sent him knowing that he had an order against removal to El Salvador. And that fact, that stubborn little fact, has driven the Supreme Court to rule against the Trump administration 9-0. And every other judge, there's now, when you add them all up, it's 21 judges who have looked at it and have ruled against the Trump administration. So she holds a hearing. She says, you haven't done anything. You've done absolutely nothing to facilitate. And she tells him every day at 5 o'clock, file a piece of paper that tells me what you've done and what you're going to do. And they tell her to go F herself every day at 5 o'clock. They say, we're not doing it. He's alive. I think he's alive. He's alive. There was a press conference. Bukele was here, but he doesn't want to release him. And we can't release him. And that guy doesn't want to release him. And what are we going to do? She says, you've done absolutely nothing. In fact, there's a motion for contempt on the board. Let's get some discovery because I'm a trial judge. Let me develop a record. Why don't we have some discovery? Let's have some depositions. All those people that filed those affidavits, let's have them in deposition, sworn question and answers under oath with a court reporter. Let's do that and start noticing those. And let's do some interrogatories, written questions and answers under oath. And let's have some documents. You know what? Judges like documents. I don't want to see unofficial transcripts of press conferences. I want to see evidence under the federal rules of civil procedure. So let's do that. How about we do that? And they didn't like that. And they didn't like her ordering the start of this process towards contempt, much like Booseberg. And they ran to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals again. And the Fourth Circuit, we knew it. You and I wrote back and forth. I said, this is Wilkinson. This is Wilkinson, even though it's like the clerk issued it. It's Wilkinson. You can tell by his writing. The guy's a prolific writer. And that should be, when you're doing your law school class, if you do a legal writing or written argument, you should take that 7 pages. Because he accomplished, Wilkinson, in 7 pages, what most lawyers would struggle and not do 1/3 as well in 50. It was poignant. It was soaring. It was stinging rebuke of the Trump administration. But at the end saying, and I'll boil it down without reading from it, and you and I have all done hot takes on it. Wilkinson said to the Trump administration, you talk a lot about your Second Amendment, your Article 2 powers. And I will agree that you have Article 2 powers, especially around foreign affairs. But we have Article 3 powers. And you are creating a grinding relationship between Article 3 and Article 2 that lessens all of us. It undermines the legitimacy of the judiciary, but it also undermines the legitimacy of your presidency. And history will write your epitaph. That's a paraphrase, but almost word for word from Wilkinson. And he said, I am hoping in this moment, this critical incipient moment, that you use this opportunity to reaffirm your commitment as a presidency to the rule of law. I implore you to do that. And what was their response to Wilkinson? And so they denied the stay to stop what they said is a fine judge in Zinnes doing a fine job with administering her process. They were not going to interfere with it, but then took 6 pages to fire back at Donald Trump. Now, at the time, I said in my hot take, what are they going to do with Wilkinson? He's not activist. He's the opposite. He's not a Marxist. He's not a leftist, and he's not corrupt. How are they going to go after Harvey Wilkinson? And what they did was they posted, we'll put it up on the screen, they posted the white from the White House official account, not even using like some plant of theirs, some social media influencer plant. They did it from the official White House .gov with a red line of the White House, of the New York Times headline. There it is. Senator meets with, cross out wrongly, deported MS-13 gang member in El Salvador. And by the way, he's never coming back. Okay. That was an FU to Harvey Wilkinson, to the rule of law, to the United States of Supreme Court. And it certainly entered their consciousness of the 9 members of the Supreme Court, at least 7 of them, in ruling against the Trump administration. So the Fourth Circuit over Maryland, over Zinnes says, you got this, judge, keep going. They're going to have to now, at the Trump side, try to get back to the United States Supreme Court, fresh on one administrative stay already going against them, about Zinnes. And you're right about a lot of things, Ben, but you're right about what I think they're going to do about fleshing out habeas corpus due process steps. Again, not great on emergency applications with 1-page decisions. Usually you want that in 30, 40 pages that you and I can ruminate over and figure out what they mean. It's hard in 2 paragraphs, but that's what they're going to do. And here, the question is, and this is back to you, Ben, the question is, are they going to clarify their 1-paragraph ruling, giving Judge Zinnes direction, saying, you got this, you're right on due process, you're right on facilitate, about how she's moving towards contempt in the Trump administration? What do you think the Supremes do about Zinnes? Either they do nothing, we don't have jurisdiction, it's too early, sorry, nothing needs clarification, we were clear in our order, or they do something. What do you think?
I think at this stage, they do nothing. I think that her order of what she's requiring them to do to comply with facilitate, she ordered expedited aggressive discovery over a 2-week period to let us know the steps you're taking to facilitate. I think that there will then be another order, right, late April, that will be the one that will probably find the Trump regime in contempt there. There will be a further order, and then that will end up going to the Supreme Court once it's clear that no steps have been taken for facilitation. When we come back, we're going to talk about Judge Booseberg finding the Trump regime in criminal contempt and saying, give us the list of the lawyers, the administration officials who were okay with violating my court order, because I'm going to hold them in criminal contempt. And if the DOJ doesn't prosecute, I'm going to have a special counsel prosecute. And Popok, as you know, sure, the Trump could eventually pardon these people, but they're going to lose their this is exactly what you and I said would happen. If you are convicted of a crime, you lose your legal license too. So even if the Trump regime were to pardon some of these people who a special counsel criminally prosecutes, these people are going to be, these lawyers and these, State Department officials and ICE officials who are aiding and abetting Trump, they don't have absolute immunity, and they are going to be criminally prosecuted. They're going to be viewed as criminals on their record. And that's going to go beyond what Trump says. I mean, beyond Trump being in office. I did a whole hot take on Trump throwing DOJ lawyers under the bus, right? Trump was asked about, well, what's going to happen with the lawyers and contempt? And Trump was like, that's not me. Ask the lawyers. And I think that's part of the reason why, as we talked about earlier, someone even like an ensign who works at the Trump DOJ said, look, we're going to do the habeas corpus proceedings, whether he was being lying or whether he was being authentic about it. I think it actually is, it at least will make some of these lawyers think, am I going to be, is Trump going to take care of me if I get criminally prosecuted for aiding and abetting his crimes where he's got immunity and I don't have immunity? So I want to talk about that. I want to read from this fact sheet, though, Popok, that I wrote. And this is what I just said. Here are the undisputed facts about Abrego Garcia. I just think it's important just to list these in this order. Undisputed. Supreme Court ruled 9-0 he was improperly sent to El Salvador and to facilitate his return. The Trump DOJ admits Abrego was sent in error to El Salvador. Abrego was given a work permit in 2019 during the first Trump administration. He checked in annually with ICE. 4, the 2019 immigration ruling says he can't be deported to El Salvador. 5, his paperwork says he had no criminal history. 6, there was a double hearsay accusation by a disgraced cop back in 2019 that Abrego has an MS-13 affiliation. And on that basis, the immigration judge said Abrego can be deported, just not to El Salvador. Still, he was viewed as being not a criminal, so he was given a work permit where you need extensive background checks to get one. Whether Abrego is good or bad, he is entitled to due process in the United States. El Salvador has facilitated the return of other people back to the United States before. The United States frequently extradites non-citizens it alleges to be the worst drug dealers and gang members in the world to have trials in the U.S. and to serve sentences, including life sentences, in U.S. prisons. And 10, if there is evidence of Abrego committing crimes, he should be held accountable once that evidence is presented and the findings of criminal conduct takes place. I don't know how you argue outside of that. As Judge Wilkinson said, it's actually relatively simple. Let's talk about that and more, Popok. We got to take our last quick break. Let's talk about Judge Booseberg's contempt, and then let's talk about the Supreme Court setting those 2 oral arguments in May. May's going to shape up, I think, to be the Supreme Court either saying dictator or not dictator, and they've scheduled May 15th to hear these 2 big cases: birthright citizenship, nationwide injunctions, and then also the cases that we're talking about now are going to be in May. And I think the Supreme Court gave Trump a face-saving way out in the 9-0. Mm-hmm. And now I think they're going to start getting a little more excoriating in the weeks and months to come. Let's take our last quick break of the show. A reminder, subscribe to Michael Popok's YouTube channel, the Legal AF YouTube channel. It is soaring right now. It's on its way to 1 million subscribers. Subscribe to Legal AF on YouTube and turn your notifications on there just as you subscribe to our YouTube channel here, the Midas Touch Network. And also, if you or someone you know is in a catastrophic injury, whether it's a car crash, a trucking accident, whether it is a wrongful death case, sexual assault case, big catastrophic type injuries, negligence cases, medical malpractice, employment cases, Popok, where can they reach out to you?
And just to put the meat on the bone there, or just to explain it better, we're representing a family of a flight attendant on the American Airlines flight that was hit by the Black Hawk helicopter over the Potomac, the American Airlines flight. We're representing a family who was father was run over by a supermarket tractor trailer. So those are the kind of cases that we're focused on. 1-877-POPOK-AF and the website thepopokfirm.com. We'll put the links up there for a moment. Go ahead.
Take our last quick break of the show.
When it comes to spending, sometimes it's out of sight, out of mind. That daily coffee habit, those streaming subscriptions, they add up fast without you even noticing. Rocket Money helps you spot those patterns so you can do something about them
and keep more money in your pocket. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. See all of your subscriptions in one place and know exactly where your money's going. For ones you don't want anymore, Rocket Money can help you cancel them. Easily create a personalized budget with custom categories to help keep your spending on track. See your monthly spending trends in each category to know exactly where your money is going. Their new goals feature automatically saves money for you so you don't have to think about it. Help pay off bills, help put away money for a house, or just build your savings. Rocket Money makes it easy. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate lower bills for you. They automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save. Then you can ask them to negotiate for you. They'll deal with customer service so you don't have to. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features. Canceled your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/legalaf today. That's rocketmoney.com/legalaf. rocketmoney.com/legalaf. In this crazy upside-down world that we're working to make sense of, I have no better judge of character than my lab border collie, Lily. And having given her her forever home, we take pride in making sure that we feed her healthy, fresh dog food while making sure we don't break our back or the bank doing so. And my family is thrilled to have found Sundays for Lily, having tried other freezer box brands, and we noticed the improved health of our dog almost right away. First, she loves the flavor. And we love what it's done to her coat, eyes, and breath. And with her weight management, so much easier to manage her weight with a scoop of Sundays than any other product we tried. And this product is super easy for us to store and serve. It doesn't require refrigeration or the delivery of dozens of pounds of ice packs. Sundays is fresh dog food made from a short list of human-grade ingredients. Sundays contains 100% all-natural meat and superfoods and 0% synthetic nutrients or artificial ingredients. Dog parents report noticeable health improvements in their pups, including softer fur, fresher breath, better poops, and more energy after switching to Sundays. Unlike other fresh dog food, Sundays does not require refrigeration or preparation because of their air drying process. Just pour and serve. Cancel or pause your subscription anytime with their 14-day money-back guarantee. Every order ships right to your door, so you'll never worry about running out of dog food again. And did I mention how easy and convenient it is to store the bags? Insert big wife smile here. Get 40% off your first order of Sundays. Go to sundaysfordogs.com/legalaf or use code legalaf at checkout.
Welcome back to Legal AF. Thank you to those pro-democracy sponsors right there. They keep this shows running. Jordy gets some great discount deals for all the Legal AFers and Midas Mighty. The discount codes for those sponsors are in the description below. Finally, Michael Popok, let's talk about what Judge Booseberg did in finding the Trump regime in criminal contempt, what that could actually mean in terms of its important implications. The D.C. circuits issued an administrative stay temporarily pausing those contempt proceedings and what Judge Booseberg basically ordered, which is there's a way to purge the contempt. Let's talk about that, and then let's get into what the Supreme Court did in saying that it has those two big oral arguments, not on the shadow docket, on its actual
real docket. And on that note, as a programming note, we are now committed on Legal AF to put up all the oral arguments that matter at the courts of appeal. That's all the ones we talked about today, the 4th, the 11th, the 2nd, the DC, wherever it may lie, the Court of International Trade. We'll talk about that another day. And the United States Supreme Court. Fortunately, on the federal side, most of these courts are allowing audio of the oral arguments. We just put up the one for the Gulf of America fight at the DC Court of Appeals for Associated Press. And we got it with a very little notice because we decided to do it a little bit last minute. We had a great turnout of our community, our fellowship here on Midas Touch and on Legal AF for that. So we're going to be the home on Legal AF of the live feeds of those oral arguments. with a pregame and postgame as well. I'll do it sometimes with Tina Dahl and sometimes with other people. I just want to do that as a little bit of a programming self-promotion there for Legal AF. Okay. So we there's so many earth-shattering things. We're running out of adjectives to describe events concerning Donald Trump. That's what happens when you send a twice impeached, multiply indicted, once convicted guy to be the president of the United States. You're going to set history, and not in a good way. And so now I thought, we could have just done a whole show about, the late night emergency administrative stay by the United States Supreme Court. We could just do one whole show on these things. And when we heard 3 days ago that Booseberg, the judge in DC, not just a judge, the chief judge, former roommate in law school for Justice Kavanaugh, good friend of Justice Roberts, middle of the road, respected by both sides of the aisle, that Chief Judge Booseberg, that he had started the criminal contempt process by a finding of probable cause that the Trump administration and its Department of Justice and others were in criminal contempt for violating his order a month ago. It's hard to believe it was 4 Saturdays ago, to ground and return any planes on the way to El Salvador, because he had ruled that they had violated the Administrative Procedures Act, they'd violated the Alien Enemies Act, they had violated the Due Process and Fifth Amendment, whatever it was, they needed to be grounded. Now, subsequently, because some people that follow Legal AF very, very closely, we have a great student body that's been in class for 5 years, they might be thinking, well, wasn't the order that he was enforcing ultimately vacated or changed in a way by the Supreme Court? And you'd be right. 3 weeks after that, 2 weeks after that, United States Supreme Court said, you're right on the substance, you're wrong on the procedure. It's not for you in DC. It's really the habeas corpus procedure that needs to be used wherever these people are before they are deported and removed. Sorry, 250 that's already in CCOT in El Salvador, but the ones that haven't left yet, you get due process and habeas corpus, but not in DC. Why are we in DC? So that was right. That at the time we were considering, is that divestment of jurisdiction over the case? No, because the judge has inherent authority. Before that order was vacated or changed, it was an enforceable on the books order of a federal judge. And you can't violate that order because you think, well, I'm going to appeal it. Well, I might win. Well, maybe I'll get a stay. Until you do, you don't. Until you do, you comply. And that is, like, there's case law on that. No man can be his own judge. And so when the Trump administration had an order, ground, wheels down, don't fly those 2 planes, the judge determined after a series of evidentiary hearings and getting the facts provided to him by the lawyers on the other side that there were at least 2 planes that went to El Salvador in violation of his order. Now, they keep arguing, well, it was 6:37 versus 7 p.m. and your order was oral, but then it was written and we were confused. Like, that's not going to work. None of that's going to work. And so the judge entertained a motion for contempt. Now, he had 2 choices there. I want to hear from you later why you think he went the criminal route. He could have done civil contempt, which he doesn't even need a prosecutor for. And it could end in jail, just like criminal contempt. And it's all within his own wheelhouse. The advantage of civil contempt, which he's not currently contemplating, is that it's not the result of the civil contempt finding is not necessarily pardonable, even though it ends up in jail. Very interesting. But he went criminal contempt because he thinks the facts were just so egregious. So in that role, the federal judge, he has a role, and then prosecutors have a role. The judge has a role to determine whether probable cause. It's sort of like he's the indicting prosecutor to start. Sort of like the information or indictment process is really under the judge. And he found it. He says, you willfully violated. I don't know exactly who. I'm going to get to the bottom of that. You're going to tell me. I love that. You're going to tell me who the contemptors are, the people that violated next week. In the meantime, you have a choice. You can purge the contempt that I have found by getting those 2 plane loads back. Good luck. We know what the Trump administration's view is of one guy, Abrego Garcia. You think they're bringing home another 100 from the same jail? They're not. So he gave them a choice, that or you tell me who violated my order, and then I'll move to the next phase and I'll refer for prosecution. Trump didn't like all of that, obviously, including the potential that a private lawyer And I volunteer you, Ben, and I know you'll volunteer me to be that private lawyer, to be a prosecutor. And if we're not available, Jack Smith's not doing anything right now to prosecute the case, because we know the Pam Bondi ain't prosecuting her boss or herself. So that ain't happening. So he was about to do that. We were moving inexorably towards that dark place. And so they ran to the D.C. Court of Appeals, the Court of Appeals that sits over D.C. And when I saw the panel poll, the random three, I wasn't happy with it. So you've got this 3-judge panel, Katsas, who almost invariably sides with Donald Trump, Rhea, who I described, and then Pillard. And I like her. She's Obama, and she's really smart. She's the smartest of the three. And I thought, it's going to have to be, for the substance merits of the appeal, it's going to have to be Pillard trying to pull Rayo over with her, because I think Katsas is a foregone conclusion, but I think she is too. And then lo and behold, nobody asked for a stay. Nobody asked for the stay of next Wednesday's deadline. And they came out yesterday, or day before yesterday, with a order 2-1 to issue a stay, making a point of saying it's just a stay. It's just so we get briefing. It doesn't mean we prejudge the case. It doesn't go to the merits. Yeah, sure it doesn't. And Pillard dropped a footnote and said, yeah, I'm not in favor of this. This is, I did not vote for this. We don't even have jurisdiction. We haven't even seen the appellate briefs yet. This is just a judge moving towards a potential referral on contempt to enforce their own orders. What are we appealing, and why are we intervening with our jurisdiction and issuing a stay? We should not, but they have. And now from there, they're asking for a brief at some point. They've set a briefing schedule, the same Wednesday deadline, which now the ACLU and all have to file their brief, and they're going to make a decision. But I'm just managing expectations. I don't like the lineup. I've been surprised occasionally, and you and I don't know, 1 out of 10 on a hand, have reported and commentated over the last 4 years about shocking news. A Trump-appointed judge ruled against Donald Trump. Could it happen? It could. Do I think it's going to happen here? I don't. What do you think is going to happen with the D.C. Court of Appeals?
I think that they'll go more along the lines of what Judge Wilkinson did. I think that they'll hear from Trump. Trump's side of the argument. I think they'll say it's probably premature for them to make a ruling at this point. And so I think that they'll end up punting it back. And then once a full record on the contempt is actually made, I think then you'll see the ruling, and I guess, one of the issue is that if the Supreme Court said you don't have jurisdiction to begin with, how is your underlying order, right?
Right. That's what I thought. I was like, nunc pro tunc, not effective.
How is your underlying order? But at the end of the day, the order was the order. The order was violated. You had jurisdiction to make that initial order, and it was not for the Trump regime to say we're not following that order. At this stage. So that becomes the issue that'll be decided, and we'll go from there. Now, criminal contempt will rear its head again in Maryland for sure. I think with Judge Zinnes, and even if Judge Booseberg gets overruled, and now everybody gets it now. Judge Booseberg, he's the D.C. federal judge. Judge Zinnes, she's the Maryland federal judge. Texas has their own federal courts. Each state has their own federal courts. They all have their court of appeals that sit above them. Multiple states have a circuit court of appeals that sits above them. The Supreme Court sits above them all. Judge Booseberg, though, gave, I think, the outline to Judge Zinnes, not that she needed it, about what the remedy can look like. And I think that's what Judge Zinnes is setting up for, a criminal contempt against the lawyers involved there. Let's talk briefly, Michael Popok, very briefly, about just the Supreme Court setting these oral arguments and when they're taking place. The two biggies on May 15th, we'll have them both live on the Legal AF channel, on the Midas Touch channel. Maybe we'll arm wrestle over whether it goes both or whether we give the Legal AF channel the exclusive. We could have that conversation. Maybe we'll just give it to Legal AF. It's all good.
You come on Legal AF and do it with me there.
Well, so I see where Popok's views, and we'll talk about whether it goes on both. Who knows? Supreme Court moves. So the birthright citizenship case, Donald Trump wants to overturn birthright citizenship. Multiple cases where the district courts have stayed or stopped Donald Trump from unilaterally declaring birthright citizenship as being unconstitutional, even though it's written into the Constitution. That goes to the United States Supreme Court. I mean, my view is the Supreme Court will hear our oral argument on May 15th. It should be pretty clear that birthright citizenship is in the Constitution. I think the Supreme Court is bringing that case up to smack Trump down. I could be naive. The Supreme Court tends to always let us down, but it seems like at least an issue where Justice Roberts gave the warning in December in his annual report about compliance with court orders and things like this. I view this as, and again, maybe very naively, and so I'll admit it could be naivety, but given all of these events and the Supreme Court's ruling that we just saw at 1 a.m., I think on these easier questions like birthright citizenship, the Supreme Court's going to use it to, assert a little bit more authority on an easy one. And then on the nationwide injunctions, I don't know how they're going to rule, but they set a hearing on whether nationwide injunctions are valid or not. It should be noted that the Trump regime relied on nationwide injunctions to derail the Biden administration's efforts to do things like restore people's rights, protect women's reproductive rights, cancel student debt. The Trump regime would run to a northern district of Texas judge. He'd issue a nationwide injunction. Now that the power has shifted, now the Republicans are against the very tool that they use throughout the Biden regime. But that's just who the Republicans are. I mean, for them, it's all games. But Popok, it often backfires for them. Assume they win this, and Trump's uses this to inflict more Project 2025 stuff. The Democrats win in the midterms. The Democrats win in 2028. People look back at the disaster that Trump's caused on the economy and Musk, and we go, we're never going back. At the end of the day, if you can't have crazy Trump judges issue nationwide injunctions in a future administration of Democrats or pro-democracy people, if you have a long-term perspective of it, you can see a world where this could ultimately backfire for them, even if they get what they want. And the ACLU, all of these legal groups, other than the firms that have tapped out and bent the knee, and now they're all internally fighting because they're like, but Trump's now telling us to do things that we didn't say in the deal. Yeah, when you give in to an extortionist, they go and take more from you, big firms that kiss the ring. But anyway, the broader point I'm making is a lot of great legal talent on the pro-democracy side that upholds the law, a lot of bad legal talent on the Trump regime side, like idiot lawyers, bad lawyers, Alina Habba type people. So ultimately, if you don't have nationwide injunctions, but you have the ability to file in the different districts very quickly and then go right to the Supreme Court, as we saw the ACLU do here, it's an important one, Popok, but to me, it's not. I don't rank it with birthright citizenship. But
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. I think on the nationwide injunction, you hear Donald Trump against it, but then I heard him complaining about, well, we're going to have 500,000 habeas corpus petitions all around because of we're back to Sleepy Joe again. Sleepy Joe Biden, we have to have 500,000. I was like, I don't know. You could have one class action in D.C. Wouldn't that be a lot easier for everybody? And then get to this. You're going to get to the Supreme Court one way or the other, whether it's a conflict between various jurisdictions or districts, or it's a class action. You're going to get there one way or the other. I don't understand and I think all the rigmarole is about on the other than it's a Project 2025 thing, because they used it very successfully, as you pointed out, to tie up the Biden administration in knots on some key issues. And they had no problem doing the Texas two-step, doing, Northern District of Texas, let's get Kaczmarek. He's the only judge there, and we'll form an organization on Doctors for Hippocratic Oath that's never existed before. And we'll incorporate them in Abilene, Texas, and then Amarillo, Texas, and then we'll file it with Kaczmarek, and then we'll go to the Fifth Circuit, and then we'll go to the Supreme Circuit. Well, I mean, what was wrong with that? And then when we do it, it's like, oh, hold it, nationwide injunctions, you say? We don't allow that anymore. The Supreme Court level, Gorsuch doesn't like nationwide injunctions, and he's got at least 2 votes for that. But look at when you don't have them. I don't even understand birthright citizenship and the nationwide injunction problem when you put the 2 things together. Because what are you trying to tell me? That the judge in California who issued a nationwide injunction, he had to limit it to the state of California. So if you're lucky enough to be born there, you're a U.S. citizen. But if you're not in one of these other states, you're not. You have to have nationwide injunctions on key constitutional precepts. I don't understand how you wouldn't have that. And we're watching the problem with no nationwide injunctions play out in our first segment today about the removal of these Venezuelans to El Salvador. Southern District is they're grounded, but Northern District, yeah, they had to run to the Supreme Court. Colorado, it's like, seriously, let's get the issues teed up. Let's get it up to a court of appeals. Let's get it over to a Supreme Court. And if you think you can win, the better person's argument is going to win, depending upon how you're counting the votes on the United States Supreme Court. So this gamesmanship, of venue forum shopping, which the Republicans have been masterful at, although we're doing it too. The Democrats, the moderates are doing it too. Of course, we're following all our cases in California and the New England, the original 13 colonies and DC, and we're staying away from Florida and Texas and Louisiana and all those places. So as I was just in court the other day in a hearing, and the judge used a phrase I hadn't heard, but I understood immediately. He said, it's the goose gander problem. You got a goose gander problem. Yeah, it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and why they don't want to. We're going to have, at the rate we're going, the lamest of lame duck presidents in Donald Trump at the midterm. I seriously believe that. I think these things that are happening now, these cosmic F-ups in the first 80 days, which you and I haven't even cataloged yet, but we have in separate places, that is searing, and the economy being trashed is seared into the brain of voters at the midterm, which will just be a referendum about Trump. Forget, there's no Kamala, there's no Sleepy Joe. It's Trump, up or down, R or D. That's it. And he's going to lose badly at the rate he's going. And we're going to make sure that happens here with the community and fellowship that we've created. At the same time, the presidency, listen, Democrats have done a lot of stupid things in their life. But if they lose this presidency off of this administration, wow. So if they get the presidency back, you telling me the Republicans don't want nationwide injunctions to drive President fill in the blank crazy? They do. That's that. Birthright citizenship, I don't know. Call me cockeyed optimist, popium, whatever people accuse me of peddling. I just don't see the Supreme Court getting 5 votes to change the U.S. Constitution from an interpretive standpoint about subject to the jurisdiction thereof. I'm using Ben's voice. I don't know why. And twist that out of contortion to shape and recognition and make that mean, well, you're here, your mother or your father. And even though you're born in a birthing center in America, you're not an American, even though the 14th Amendment says you are. I just don't see this Supreme Court writing that as their obituary.
Well, I think that was a great impression of me. I would encourage you to keep on doing that impression.
Why am I doing that?
I was wondering. I was like, is that me over there speaking? Okay, we covered a lot. It was very heavy on immigration, but I thought we also covered jurisdiction, which is an important role for all of these cases. So that you understand, oh, got it, I understand. District court judge, court of appeals, Supreme Court, how this all fits together. And of course, we'll be covering all of this, all of the developments on the Legal AF YouTube channel. Also, we do legal takes on the Midas Touch channel, but we want to make sure that we hit every legal issue from every angle. And Michael Popok has put together an all-star team of not just Popok, but the top lawyers in the country. Some of the people who are behind a lot of these big cases, they're all on the Legal AF YouTube channel every single day, cranking out hot takes. And I got some big interviews coming up this next week with some of the key strategists behind all of this litigation. So excited to share that with you. Also, if you've been injured or you know someone who's been injured in a catastrophic type of situation, truck accidents, car accidents, medical malpractice, negligence, sexual assault, abuse, Michael Popok's new law firm handling catastrophic injury cases. So if you were looking for a lawyer, consultation is free. Lots of people were asking Popok to do this. Popok left his other, he started his own new firm to do specifically this, and it's off to a great start. Popok, tell us where we can find you.
Sure, easy. I made it easy on everybody, including me. 1-877 POPOK-AF is the phone number, and the website is www.the-Popok Firm, and Popok is Popok.
Thank you, everybody, so much for watching this episode of Legal AF. We'll see you next time. Hit subscribe to the Legal AF audio podcast as well. Leave a 5-star review there so all those Rogan people don't bomb it with negative reviews. If you like the show, give it this 5-star review there. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a great rest of the weekend. Stay in the fight, because when we fight, we win. Hit subscribe right now. Shout out Legal AFers. Shout out Meiselas Michael.